How did y'all meet?
Kind of. Well, it's kind of a weird.
Yeah,
like,
I guess kind of around. You
met my brother first, and then that's how we met. So
I was already playing drums, and one of my older buddies was like a electronics nerd, and I wanted, it wasn't like you could go out and buy DJ equipment. You couldn't ask somebody what to get, what things worked well for scratching records. So my dude was into electronics, and he helped me just literally make something. And we took a light switch.
Yeah, I remember that. This is best.
And it was like a homemade transformer switch. It was built into this old Sansui stereo. Then I put a tape deck on top to keep the whole thing from moving.
It was like mounted in there too. Like
into like this wooden shelving system I built. So I basically made my own scratch thing with my homie when I was young. I didn't have any gear.
And the switch was the crossfader.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's absolutely. And
I
was playing in bands at the time, but I would have, cats would come over and we'd chill after school, and people were kind of like, "Yo, Tobe's house." Not like he smoked weed out of the bong after school, and nobody gives a but he's also got this crazy stereo system. You never believed a stereo system. People, I was like, what is he doing? I'm in there, and I didn't have a sampler. I had a reel-to-reel machine.
Yeah.
And I would take the loops and record audio onto the tape, cut a piece out, and tape it together. And the loops that I would make would be around the light post, around the bed post. They could be 10, 12 feet long as hell.
It's called the homemade hump, man.
Really?
Well, that was one of the tapes.
So I started making these early what other people were doing pause tapes. And I was like really experimenting with broken hand-me-down equipment. And that attracted some weirdos basically.
Well, yeah.
So when I got kicked out of school from Walnut Hills in 8th grade, and my mom kicked me out too, so I went to go live with my dad in Woodlawn and Zone 15 bus rides, and met Noah's next older brother.
Yeah.
And he was a guitarist, and we had some similar friends because I grew up in Clifton, and he went to school with some other kids that I played soccer with and shit. So we had people, like friends in common. So we kind of graduated, and neither one of us felt really at home in the burbs necessarily. So he and I kind of became cool pretty quick. And then Noah was
I was younger than
brother.
him, and like he basically, I think either he traded in his guitar or something.
Yeah, he traded the guitar to get some turntables.
Mixer. Yeah, they had some turntables.
He's like, I got turntables at home. And I was like, oh, do you?
Yeah.
I came over like, let me see what you got.
Yeah, and there's me. So, and then...
Yeah, no, it's like...
since I'm the baby of my family... I'm 4. Yeah.
4 years.
So then, like, basically I was the baby of my family, so any chance I got to get out of my house, I, just gravitated to Toby because he's a weirdo, like myself. And then we started our first kind of studio with the 4-track.
That's where I met Dan, too.
Yeah.
Was that Princeton?
Well, you met him but I want to say I met Dan before, or was it...
And Dan would show up and come to the little parties after school in my basement, wouldn't say shit, sit quiet in the corner, and then disappeared for a year.
It's very consistent.
And then came back.
No. I can tell you when he came back.
For like a year, and he came back just murdering shit. And I was like, what?
I would have golf and bowling
he sat
class.
Quiet, didn't touch the turntables.
Bowling for Columbine class, and then I would see Dan, and Dan had just come back from, was it Ohio State?
Yeah. I mean, on just a fully transparent kind of introspective moment.
Yeah.
Like, I was doing a lot with anxiety and, like, antisocial stuff, and I had the music saved my life, basically. So I had turntables that one summer in high school I had saved up enough money cutting grass for a couple years. And I didn't know what I was doing. There's no research on the internet you could do. There's nothing you could, like, Google. No. So I just went down. There's a local music store in Evendale. Don't recall the name, but they had a pair of Gemini turntables, some belt drives, and, like, 18-inch rack mount mixer with like 4 channels, big old crossfader as like the biggest one. Must be the best one. Give me that one.
Mixer like this.
It was terrible. It was terrible. But
what made it terrible?
The crossfader. I mean, it was just like
peanut butter.
Across the street.
Crossing the street. I like that. That's awesome.
And so, but that's there wasn't tutorials, so that's kind of how you developed your own style and your own skill by navigating around those tools, because not everybody had the same tools in their toolbox necessarily.
Right.
So you had to listen to records, and you didn't have the image necessarily, so you had to emulate that. through your auditory senses. Like, what is he doing?
Yeah.
Let me try this.
Right, you didn't.
And then
You
through
couldn't
that,
even
you
see
develop,
which hand was he doing it. How was what is this like?
I mean,
hold it
even
this
if
way,
you
hold it
even if
this
you
way.
could watch it again.
So
or
when
something,
Tope
still
says
know.
I came back a year later, it's like, because I was watching him, it's like, how are you doing that? It sounded like this. I know it sounded like that. And so I did it and kind of freehand the way I learned. I taught myself how to do it,
Right.
which was not correct in the form of Toby,
Right.
but it was correct,
In
you
the
know.
form of Dan.
If it sound good, it's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah. Even if it sounds
That's a
wrong,
good,
it sounds
that's
right.
a good
It sounds
point.
right.
Yeah.
you
That's
know?
a good point. I think
Yeah.
we probably do overlook that is a strong suit. One thing that we did always do as a group is really respect each other's strengths, and that not everybody did everything as good as the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember finding things that I'm like, man, that is so dope that I'm not messing with it. Hey, Dan, Tope,
Hey,
check this out.
why don't you rip this?
Yeah, check this out.
Yeah.
Type shit. Type shit. Type shit.